Hollywood's golden age built legends, men whose faces defined cinema, whose voices sold millions of records, whose images were sculpted and guarded by the studios that owned them. But behind those images lived a darker truth. 10 of the era's most celebrated stars terrorized the people closest to them, and for decades the world never knew. Charlie Chaplin was arguably the most recognizable person on the planet during the 1920s. His screen persona, the little tramp with his bowler hat, bamboo cane, and waddling gait, was beloved in every nation with a movie theater. Yet the man behind that beloved character was strikingly different from the gentle, bumbling figure audiences adored. Born in London in 1889, Chaplin immigrated to America in 1913 and achieved worldwide stardom within a decade. Behind the fame, however, lay a deeply troubling pattern in his personal life. His first wife, Mildred Harris, was just 16 when he began pursuing her in 1918. He was 29. His second wife, Leda Gray, was only 12 when they first met on the set of The Kid. By the time she was 15, Chaplin had pursued a romantic relationship with her. When she became pregnant at 16, he took her to Mexico to marry her privately, partly to avoid potential statutory rape charges under California law. Their 1927 divorce produced a scandalous 52-page legal filing in which Gray accused him of physical threats and various forms of abuse. The settlement reportedly cost Chaplin around $1 million. His later marriages to actress Paulette Goddard, age 24, and Una O'Neill, age 18, followed a similar age gap pattern. Chaplin lived his final years in Switzerland after being barred from re-entering the United States in 1952 over alleged communist sympathies. He received an honorary Oscar in 1972, was knighted in 1975, and died in 1977. On screen, Errol Flynn was the embodiment of dashing heroism, the knight, the pirate, the swashbuckling adventurer. His charisma was so effortless and convincing that audiences spent years failing to see the profound gap between the character and the man. Flynn was born in Hobart, Tasmania, Australia, in 1909. He spent his early adult years drifting restlessly through New Guinea and Europe before arriving in Hollywood in the mid-1930s. His breakthrough came swiftly. Captain Blood, 1935, transformed him almost overnight into one of the most recognizable stars in the world. His first marriage to French actress Lily Damita was by most accounts mutually volatile. Hollywood insiders nicknamed them the Battling Flynns. At their first anniversary party, Flynn arrived late, and Damita reportedly shattered a champagne bottle over his head. He struck her in return, breaking one of her teeth. Both were hospitalized. Warner Brothers quietly buried the story, telling reporters Flynn had swerved his car to avoid hitting a cat. In 1942, Flynn stood trial on statutory rape charges involving 2 young women, Peggy Satterley, 15, and Betty Hansen, 17. The month-long trial gripped the nation. He was acquitted on all counts, and the verdict paradoxically boosted his celebrity, even giving rise to the popular expression, "in like Flynn." His final years were marked by serious decline. Addicted to both heroin and alcohol, his contract with Warner Brothers was eventually canceled. Near the end of his life, his companion was Beverly Adland, whom he had begun pursuing when she was just 15. He died in Vancouver in 1959, aged 50. An autopsy revealed his liver resembled that of a man 25 years older. For much of the 20th century, Bing Crosby represented the very ideal of wholesome American family life. White Christmas, Going My Way, his beloved radio program. He was even voted Hollywood's most typical father in a 1937 poll. Behind that carefully polished image, however, was a far darker reality. Crosby was born in Tacoma, Washington in 1903. He married actress Dixie Lee in 1930, and together they had 4 sons, Gary, Dennis, Philip, and Lindsay. Dixie Lee struggled with alcoholism throughout their marriage and died of ovarian cancer in 1952 at just 40 years old. By most accounts, Crosby was a cold, controlling, and frequently absent father whose presence in the home generated fear rather than warmth. When he was around, discipline was harsh and physical. In his 1983 memoir, Going My Own Way, eldest son, Gary, described being beaten nearly every day with a metal-studded belt. He also recalled being weighed weekly, with Bing obsessed over his son's weight and being taken to his father's office for a beating if the number displeased him. Brothers Dennis and Lindsay later confirmed the abuse was real, though they disagreed on its extent. Crosby died in 1977 on a golf course in Spain, reportedly content after shooting a round of 85. Gary's memoir arrived 6 years later and quietly dismantled the legend of the warm, pipe-smoking patriarch. Tragically, 2 of his 4 sons did not survive long into adulthood. Lindsay died by suicide in 1989 and Dennis followed in 1991. In the 1920s, John Barrymore was broadly considered the finest actor in America, perhaps in the English-speaking world. Born John Sidney Blythe in 1882 in Philadelphia, into the most celebrated acting dynasty in the country, he earned the nickname the Great Profile for his striking classical features and commanding stage presence. His 1922 Broadway production of Hamlet ran for 101 performances and was hailed as a defining moment in American theater. He repeated the triumph in London the following year to equal enthusiasm. When sound came to Hollywood, Barrymore adapted effortlessly, delivering memorable performances in Grand Hotel 1932 and 20th Century 1934. He was also a severe and eventually incapacitating alcoholic and a man repeatedly violent with the women he married. His second wife, poet and playwright Blanche Ulrichs, who wrote under the name Michael Strange, described their union as a prolonged psychological battle. His third wife, actress Dolores Costello, bore him 2 children before enduring years of alcoholic rages and erratic behavior, ultimately filing for divorce in 1935. His fourth wife, actress Elaine Barry, documented the chaos and violence of their brief marriage in her memoir, All My Sins Remembered. By the late 1930s, Barrymore's memory had deteriorated so severely that lines had to be written on cards hidden around film sets. He died in 1942 at 60, his liver destroyed by decades of heavy drinking. The pattern extended to the next generation. His son, John Drew Barrymore, father of actress Drew Barrymore, spent decades as a violent alcoholic, was jailed multiple times for spousal abuse, and remained largely estranged from his own daughter throughout her childhood. Sean Connery became one of the most celebrated actors of the 20th century by portraying James Bond charming, sophisticated, and effortlessly dominant. That persona, it turned out, bore an uncomfortable resemblance to what his first wife later described about their private life together. Connery was born in Edinburgh in 1930, the son of a factory worker and a cleaner. He grew up in a tenement in the Fountain Bridge district, left school at 13, and took a series of manual jobs, laborer, milkman, coffin polisher, before serving in the Royal Navy. He drifted into modeling and then acting with no formal training whatsoever. Cast as Bond in 1962, he went from relative obscurity to global stardom almost overnight. That same year, he married Australian actress Diane Cilento, with whom he had one son, actor Jason Connery. In her 2006 autobiography, My 9 Lives, Cilento described more than a decade of physical and emotional abuse. She wrote that Connery resented her professional success. She had received an Academy Award nomination for Tom Jones in 1963 and pressured her to abandon her career entirely. He controlled their finances, rejected acting offers on her behalf without her knowledge, and was, by her account, periodically violent. She described one early incident in a hotel room in Almeria, Spain in 1965 during the filming of The Hill, in which he beat her until she was able to lock herself in the bathroom where she spent the night on the floor. Connery's own public statements offered little reassurance. In a 1965 Playboy interview, he stated that an open-handed slap was sometimes justified if a woman had been warned sufficiently. When Barbara Walters confronted him with those remarks in 1987, he did not withdraw them. In 1993, Vanity Fair quoted him suggesting that some women provoke physical confrontation and should expect the consequences. When Cilento's memoir reignited the allegations publicly, Connery canceled a scheduled appearance at the Scottish Parliament. A statement issued through associates said he opposed all violence against women. He never said so himself publicly in his own words. He died in the Bahamas in 2020 at the age of 90. Most obituaries addressed his views on striking women briefly if they mentioned them at all. Few images in Hollywood history proved as durable as John Wayne, the laconic cowboy, the unshakable war hero, the embodiment of rugged American masculinity. According to court testimony and multiple biographies, the private man bore little resemblance to that icon. Wayne was born Marion Robert Morrison in 1907 in Winterset, Iowa. He rose to stardom through John Ford's westerns in the late 1930s and never truly left the spotlight. He married 3 times. His second wife, Mexican actress Esperanza Bauer, known around Hollywood as Cheta, testified during their early 1950s divorce proceedings that Wayne had repeatedly struck her, blackened her eye, pulled her from bed, and humiliated her physically in front of guests. Wayne denied every allegation and countered with accusations of her alcoholism and infidelity. A substantial settlement was reached, and the public largely moved on. Biographer Richard Douglas Jensen, who spent decades researching Wayne's life, concluded that he committed domestic violence against all 3 of his wives. Jensen also described Wayne as a severe alcoholic whose rages were sudden and unpredictable, a man who spent his entire career projecting values he consistently failed to live by in private. His third wife, Peruvian actress Pilar Palete, quietly separated from him in 1973, drawing almost no public attention. Wayne died in 1979. Ronald Reagan delivered a formal tribute, and the mythology endured largely intact. The abuse allegations documented in courtrooms and biographies alike barely registered against the weight of the legend. Spencer Tracy was, by the consensus of his peers, among the finest screen actors who ever lived. He won back-to-back Academy Awards for Best Actor for Captain's Courageous 1937 and Boys Town 1938, a distinction no male actor had previously achieved. Katharine Hepburn, his companion of 26 years, called him simply the best she had ever watched work. Tracy was born in Milwaukee in 1900. He married actress Louise Treadwell in 1923, and they had 2 children together. He never divorced her, not even after his relationship with Hepburn began in 1942. Hepburn later said she respected that choice, even as it permanently defined the limits of what they could be to each other. What remained largely unspoken publicly was Tracy's severe alcoholism and the violence it unleashed. His binges lasted days or weeks at a stretch, during which he became erratic and physically dangerous. Louise endured this for decades in near total silence. Colleagues described the sober Tracy as warm, disciplined, and deeply generous, and the drinking Tracy as someone genuinely frightening to be near. His biographers have suggested that much of his alcoholism was rooted in guilt over his son John being born deaf. He and Louise transformed some of that pain into something lasting. The John Tracy Clinic at USC, founded in 1942, dedicated to education for deaf children, continues operating today. Tracy died in 1967, just 17 days after completing Guess Who's Coming to Dinner alongside Hepburn. He was 67. Hepburn did not attend his funeral out of respect for Louise's presence. Louise Treadwell Tracy never spoke publicly about what she had endured. James Caan made his name playing Sonny Corleone in The Godfather 1972, the volatile, hot-headed eldest son of the Corleone crime family, a man who led with his temper and his fists. The role earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor and established him as one of the most recognizable faces of his generation. Born in the Bronx in 1940, Caan built a career around physically imposing, emotionally combustible characters in Brian's Song 1971, Thief 1981, and Misery 1990, where he played the unfortunate captive to Kathy Bates's unforgettable performance. Within the industry, he was widely respected as an actor of genuine and substantial talent. In 1994, he was arrested on a misdemeanor assault charge following a domestic violence incident involving a former girlfriend. That arrest was, by the accounts of several former partners and wives, a single visible moment in a longer pattern, a man whose considerable charm could give way without warning to something far more dangerous. He married 5 times. In later interviews, Caan acknowledged that his behavior had caused real harm to people he loved, and that he had fallen well short of who he should have been in his private life. His case illustrates something worth noting. A screen reputation for toughness and volatility has historically functioned in Hollywood as a kind of implicit explanation, sometimes even an endorsement for similar behavior off camera. The boundary between performance and person was rarely examined closely. Caan died in July 2022 at 82 from coronary artery disease. Tributes were warm and plentiful, focused almost entirely on his films. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. See you in the next one.